Hey, college sports fans, guess what? Week 0 is behind us, and it was a blast, if you ask me. And now here we come with week 1 for the Clemson Tigers, finally ready to go onto the field, kick some opposing Tiger tail, if you will, and define the real Death Valley, we all hope. So let's preview that game, LSU versus Clemson. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme All Way Podcast, Season 4.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Is it Bill Zimmerman or Clark Kent or Superman? I didn't know what was going on there for a
These,
second.
these are my Tom Allens, man. I just got
You,
them.
you tricked me there for a little bit. Yeah, no, I can't wait for Saturday night. Look, it's one game in a 12 game season, and Dabo Swinney says it all the time. It's 12, 12. It's 12 individual seasons, really, right? Because you lose the college football game and we all lose our minds for 6 days, but then you play another one. And we saw this team last year look awful in the first game, especially in the second half,
Yeah.
and then go win the conference and make the playoff. And I think it's a better team this year than last year. Now you got to go do it, right? And Dabo talked about Cade Klubnik. All of last year, he was told how terrible he was. And I don't know if it was everybody was saying that, but there was a lot of questions about Cade Klubnik.
Right.
Now, this year, it's everybody telling him he's great. But I think that applies to the whole team, Bill, too, right? This time last year, Florida State was the Miss America, right? And it was the first pick for the dance, and we saw what happened to them. Now they also had a differently built roster than Clemson. And Matt Baker for us at The Athletic had a really good story this morning about what if Dabo's right about the transfer portal. And you and I've talked about this a lot. And I'm glad it's the first national kind of writer I've seen write that. And at one point he's talking about that, and it's just like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe if you don't run everybody off and bring in 15 new transfers, then your roster develops and an Antonio Williams becomes a star and a Peter Woods becomes a star and Cade Klubnik becomes a star and a TJ Parker becomes a star. And, I've seen other stuff of 5 first round draft picks on this roster for next spring. Well, if you're bringing in transfers 10 or 15 at a time, how do you have time to let guys develop into that? And I said it all last summer, and I was right about Florida State. I was wrong about some other ones. I thought Oklahoma would be really good. They weren't. But I thought Florida State was a paper Seminole last year. And I'm not going to say paper Tiger because they're not the Tigers. But I thought it all last summer. And I said it. You have to have a foundation, and you have to recruit, and you have to develop, and you have to build from within. And we'll find out. We have a small data size about transfer portal and all that. Maybe Dabo ends up being wrong. Maybe this team doesn't live up to the hype. But it sure feels like this team's got a rock hard foundation to build from. Now let's go see what it can become this season.
Absolutely. And it's going to get put to the test right away by a
Yep.
team that has leaned on the portal a little bit more. And yes, Clemson has dipped at least a toe into the waters, bringing in one expected starter at defensive end, being Will Helt, and then a couple of reserves who should rotate onto the field pretty regularly with Jeremiah Alexander at linebacker, a little bit of experience at end, not the greatest experience there, and then Tristan Smith at wide receiver. Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. It's free. It's the best place to catch all our episodes, and it's the best place for you to comment with your reactions. And then a couple of reserves who should rotate onto the field pretty regularly with Jeremiah Alexander at linebacker, a little bit of experience at end, not the greatest experience there, and then Tristan Smith at wide receiver. But then you look around at LSU going to the portal, and how many times have I talked about what are the two things that can quickly be an Achilles heel for a team? On offense, it's that offensive line. The way that
Yep.
defenses are built, they want to pressure the quarterback right now, and that puts a lot of premium on having an offensive line. And then on defense, it's the secondary because teams want to get their quarterback sprung free, able to see down the field and deliver to guys in space, get the ball into space and let them work. And those are the two areas for LSU where they have gone to the portal pretty hard. Offensive line, they lost four guys to the NFL draft off of last year's offensive line. And Garrett Nussmeier wasn't an especially mobile quarterback. Now he's effective at avoiding contact and still delivering the ball. Wasn't particularly mobile, no. Mobile though, and that was with four NFL linemen draft quality in front of him. So how is that going to work if these guys don't mesh right away? There's going to be a pretty critical factor, I think, for them to mesh quickly up front for LSU because they are going to face a Clemson defensive line that brings back three very experienced guys, including a little bit of experience rotating in behind at defensive tackle, a supposedly bulked up Jaheim Lawson, bringing some backup experience now at defensive end after he was kind of forced into service last year. But when you look across TJ Parker, DeMonte Capehart, Peter Woods, and then Helt, as we mentioned, that's a test for an offensive line that is yet to play a game together against outside competition.
Right. We don't know. Like, again, I'll use Florida State as an example. Is it Florida State 2 years ago or Florida State last year? Right. And I think it's so much change every year for a lot of these teams. When you hit on those guys, hey, watch out. And Florida State's 13-0 with their starting quarterback, right? And then when you don't hit on
or 11-0 before he got hurt.
Right, 11-0 before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Undefeated before he got hurt.
Right.
But if you don't hit on those guys, then you have a team at Florida State look like it quit halfway through last year, right? As soon as something went wrong, you don't have that locker room combination and feel for each other. And I'm playing for this guy next to me. It's like, hey man, I'm out the door.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just using Florida State as an example because that's the most extreme example we've seen since all the portal stuff happened. Probably a playoff team 1 year, terrible the next. So, hey, maybe LSU hit on all these guys, and this is this year's Florida State. We'll find out. That's why we play these games. We can talk about it all summer, and you and I have. But the thing about that, I think if you're a Clemson fan, that you have to feel, okay, where's our advantage? There's a couple of things. A, you're at home, right? The fan base should be jacked up. Bill, this is the first time Clemson has played a home game to start the season since 2019. Think about that.
Wow.
That is a long time ago.
Yeah.
You remember, my son Ben, he was at that game. He was working for the football team. That was his first game of his freshman year. That was also the first game ever on the ACC network. Right? That was that game against Georgia Tech.
Wow.
And so that's how long ago that's been.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
It's been that long since Clemson opened the season at home. They've been on the road or they played neutral site games. So the fan base, I would hope that place is rocking Saturday night.
I'm sure it will be.
I hope the Hill is full. We haven't seen the Hill be full very much. And I hope it's just bonkers.
Well, and that's the fire marshal messing with the Hill.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But maybe there's 10,000 people outside the stadium can't get in.
Yeah.
Right? All that stuff that goes along with it. Brian Kelly has that same reaction that he had when he was at Notre Dame walking down on the field. Whatever. But the other advantages, Bill, like for me anyway, is you've got to win up front. You have to win up front on both sides of the ball.
Both sides, absolutely.
And you look at Clemson's defensive front. You got Parker. You mentioned Helt. DeMonte Capehart is back. I think it is huge that Peter Woods is playing at the right position this year.
Yeah.
They tried it last year. Him on the outside, it was kind of a necessity. It wasn't him. He wasn't bad, but it didn't work.
I've seen some highlights that he pulled off against Georgia, and then he got dove at the knees on a I don't think it was a dirty attempt, but it was a block attempt and an awkward one.
Right.
And yeah, spent a lot of time.
But
Never really got back to form after that.
but they also got exposed on the other end,
Yeah.
right? So now you bring in help to strengthen that. You've got Parker on the other end, right? I mean, without Woods out in the middle, you think about his build when he's on the outside, you're not at your strongest on two spots. So now you
Right.
can be. So that's got to be a strength, and the offensive line has to play well, right? Four starters back or four veteran guys back as starters, and we'll see what the combination is of who starts. But they have to play well. Look, LSU, two transfers up front as well on defense. So I think quarterback probably push, right? If Cade outplays Nussmeier, then
Yeah.
hey, you got something,
But they're
right?
two different styles of quarterback and both very
Absolutely,
effective. And it's,
absolutely.
yeah, I think all in all, probably a push.
Probably let's say it's not a push, but it's close. Whatever it is at quarterback. If you win up front, you win at quarterback.
There
Probably,
you go.
you know.
Exactly.
So I think the place has got to be as loud as it's ever been, and B, you have to win up front. If you do those two things, I think you win this game. I really do. I think you're probably better at wide receiver than them, although they're always good at wide receiver.
Yeah.
But
And brought
this
in a
year,
guy from Kentucky who torched us in a bowl game.
right? I think
Yeah.
this year's Clemson group is better than their group, and it's close.
Hmm.
Not a huge. I'm not saying, and I know some LSU people, if they listen, probably call me an idiot. That's fine. I think it's a close combination. I think running back, it's close, right? We'll find out what Clemson is at running back.
Probably LSU, but yeah, it's close.
Probably LSU, right? Linebackers, again, two. I mean, I think they're really good at linebacker, right? But I think Clemson is too. And then, they got a bunch of transfers in the secondary.
There it
Clemson's
is.
got to be Clemson's got to be better at safety. I think they're okay at cornerback.
Yes.
I think they're good at cornerback. The safeties have got to be better. Bill, there's one name, and I think you and I talked about this summer.
Connect with us on social media. That's at Clemson Kickoff. Whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Facebook, you'll find us there.
That they're going to miss, who I don't know that people are talking enough about, and that's Mickens.
Right. RJ Mickens. Yep.
There, whenever there were busts in the secondary, it wasn't him. It's not a lot. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but whenever there were those big time busts on the back end of the secondary, it typically wasn't him.
And he also cleaned up some before they went from bad to disastrous.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've got to be better at safety. But that also comes with getting a pass rush and getting home. And, you talk about this all the time. Pass rush lanes. Don't be out of control with your pass rush. So I think all of that stuff matters, but it's got to start up front. They've got to win up front if they're going to win this game.
Yeah, and I think that speaks even more to LSU. Like they are going to have to find a way to throw off Matt Luke's group on the offensive line to be able to cover for that secondary that has a lot of plug and play guys. Good bit of transfers back there in that LSU secondary. If Matt Luke's group can show improvement, and there really kind of was I won't say it's as bad as a tale of two seasons on that offensive line. But once Marcus Tate went down, things started changing a little bit. And I don't know if that was Tate getting out. I don't know if Tate meant that much. Was it Tate or Tate? But something kind of deteriorated there a little bit. Klubnik had a little less time to throw. Maybe teams were figuring out, hey, Maffa's playing hurt. Let's not do so much against the run. Let's tee off on disrupting the passing game and worry less about the run. Could be any of those things. I'm not in those opposing locker rooms understanding what's going on. But I think LSU, if they are able to control that line of scrimmage and disrupt Matt Luke's offensive line, that can start to create trouble. But if Matt Luke's offensive line can hold up, four guys back as starters, the guy who's plugging in, whether we'll see how healthy Walker Parks is. We may be plugging in one or two guys that were not first team starters coming into last season, but they got starting experience as the season went on. Colin Sadler also coming back from injury, so his experience goes back a little further. He's recovering. If they protect Cade Klubnik, if they open those passing lanes and those windows for him to see guys on time, uh, the sky is the limit because we all know, you mentioned Antonio Williams having that experience, coming back, continuing to refine his game. Bryant Wesco has added weight. We've seen his natural ability. If he's adding know-how on top of that and can avoid that sort of Sammy Watkins sophomore slump that you and I talked about, didn't seem to dent his statistics all that badly, but there's a difference, right? TJ Moore, I think there was a learning curve with him late in the year, started looking really, really good, like the guy that I saw the high school tape of and could see the potential for. Weapons, man. You got three on the field at all times. You can rotate in. Guess who's back? Tyler Brown, and work him open in the seams and in the secondary. He's a guy who can kind of get lost and get open. Tristan Smith, the opposite, right? He's a towering guy, a big target. You throw out that 50-50 ball, and he's earned rave reviews since coming in the spring as a starter. You've got Cole Turner back, a little bit of speed, a little bit of burner out there. So there are so many options that you can throw at them. And then don't forget Adam Randall, converted receiver, apparently our starting running back. You want to start running some wheel routes? You want to start running some dump routes, some little dink and dunk stuff? Not easy for me to say, hopefully easy for him to execute. Get him in space, get him working, not just as a rusher and a running back, but catching the ball as well. You can really put this LSU defense on its heels if you have the time to let those things develop. Keep Klubnik calm, keep Klubnik making good decisions, thinking straight, right? Like you don't want to see how jumbled Cade Klubnik was at the end of that South Carolina game last year. You don't want to see how jumbled he was against Georgia week 1 last year or Duke week 1 the previous year. You want your top prime form of Cade Klubnik right out of gate, and that is not something we've seen yet. But tons of transfers in that LSU secondary sure gives them a lot of room where they can work. And in fact, one of their key transfers is an NC State guy. We all know what happened with Klubnik and his receivers against NC State's secondary last year. So there is that potential for them to open things up. Do they come out explosive out of the gate like they did against App State, NC State last year? Probably not. I think LSU has more speed than that. I think they can kind of make the windows small early on in the game. Give it time, Clemson fans. Breathe. If you're in the stands, cheer and breathe when you're not cheering. Catch your breath when offense is on the field. Cheer when the defense is on the field. Make that place loud when LSU is trying to execute. There's just no sure thing in any of that, though.
Right. Right.
So you and I did like the position by position breakdowns coming into the year. What are your primary thoughts matchup wise against LSU that either give you confidence or give you concern?
Confidence is the defensive line against their offensive line. And you typically don't say that against an SEC team, right? The SEC teams typically win the offensive line. I like Clemson's defensive line against their offensive line. I like Clemson's quarterback against their secondary. You mentioned Cade's got to play better in the opener. He hasn't played well in the opener the last couple of years, right? So he's got to play well. I think he will play well. I do. I think him being at home, other than that South Carolina game last year and then Louisville, the Louisville game was just weird from start to finish.
Can we just forget that ever happened?
What's the old Men in Black thing? Let's get that pen out and zap it out of our memory. Yeah. And that was just a weird game from start to finish. So I like the way that he has grown. And Bill, go back to growth, right? Dabo could have brought in a transfer quarterback. He didn't. It's like, hey man, you're our guy. Well, Cade was pretty good last year. Wasn't great. It wasn't perfect.
Most of the year, though.
But he was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And even like when they had lulls, the Pitt game, where they were unbelievable to start the game and then were terrible for 2.5 quarters, he makes a play to win the game. So, I think that he can live up to this hype, but he's got to have help around him. They've got to be smart. They've got to tackle better.
Yeah.
I mean, the tackling last year, it was one of the worst tackling Clemson defenses we've seen in a long time. And I might Ron Dickerson, right? You and I were when that the defense coordinator when at the end of our time there, and just they did not tackle well at all.
Or who was it before Kevin Steele? Who did Kevin Steele replace? That was a poor tackling team as well.
Oh yeah, it was. You're right. Right at the start of Dabo's tenure. Right. So I mean, they've got to tackle better. They've got to show some discipline on defense. You would think that and go back to your glasses stunt at the start, that Tom Allen, put him back on, Tom. Let's see him. Okay. You would think that Tom Allen would clean up some of that stuff. Now, I'm still kind of surprised there was only one coaching change on the defense.
Hey, check out our website, clemsonkickoff.com. It's got kickoff times. It's got archives of episodes and blogs, some offers. It's a simple resource for you.
Does one coach change all of that? Maybe it grows. Maybe it takes time.
Right.
But, Bill, look at the last couple of openers. The last, 3 or 4 openers. The loss to Georgia in Charlotte, the loss at Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, just sloppy. Last year's loss, sloppy. So, maybe being at home helps with some of that as well. I just, you want to be like confident like you were during that playoff run.
Yeah.
That Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, that era, even the Kelly Bryant years.
Right.
You went into a lot of games thinking, hey, they're going to win this game. And because Kelly Bryant wasn't going to hurt you. He wasn't going to lose the game. He was, and how many times have you and I talked about this? Cade Klubnik does not need to be Superman, and he doesn't need to try.
Yeah.
Run the offense, get the ball to your playmakers. You drop back and your first 2 reads aren't there, dump the ball to Adam Randall. Dump it to Gideon Davidson. Take off and run.
Or chuck it out, get outside the tackle box and chuck it over the sideline.
It's not an incompletion is not a bad play.
Right.
But Bill, I'll go back to the Florida State analogy again. 2 years ago, they're up 7. They're at midfield. They've got all the momentum in the world. They're driving. He drops back, holds the ball, gets blindsided, sack, fumble, touchdown, Seminoles, and that game was never the same.
Yeah.
Now, that's not all his fault. Somebody missed a block. We know that. But you've got to feel that. You got to know I can't stand back here and hold the ball for 5 seconds.
Right.
I've got to get
And he's gotten better at that.
He has. Yeah. But that also, there's got to be some coaching to that, right? And I go back to this still. They had a good season last year. They had a good season. They went to the playoff. That's always going to be a good season, I think, in the new era of college football.
Absolutely.
They were not great. They lost the Louisville loss, the South Carolina loss. If you're a Clemson fan, I don't think you can get over losing that game. You've got a 7-point lead in the 4th quarter. You should not lose that game.
Right.
Texas was better than them. I'm not going to be upset about that. You weren't happy about it, and the way they played in the second half against Georgia, you got guys missing assignments and trying to do too much. And if you're good enough and you know that the guy next to you is good enough, you don't try to do too much. You do your job. And there's got to be more of that coming up Saturday night.
Would you rather, looking back, take the first half against Georgia and move it to the first half against Texas so you advance in the playoff? Or would you rather take that second half against Texas and move it to the first game of the year and get that rivalry win over Georgia? Let's not even go down that road in actuality, but you think about that, right?
I'd rather beat South Carolina than any of it.
I should have seen that coming. Do you want to put
my buddy Kevin Selman just said, yes, beat South Carolina. That's the one.
Do you want to put a pick out there? Do you want to put a score out there? We didn't do much of that last year, but this game feels big. If we were going to break the rules, this would be the one where I would say go for it if you want.
Yeah, I'm not much of a gambler. You know that.
Right.
I don't gamble in sports. I do make picks at the Athletic now that are just for fellowship. There's no money
Yeah.
involved.
Right.
I would say, what's the line? I think it's 3.5 as we record here today.
I saw 4 somewhere, but I've mostly seen 3.5.
3.5.
And I don't look for it, but
I would think Clemson wins. I think it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter. I don't think it's a blowout either way. But I think Clemson finds a way to win this game. I think remember that run where felt like Clemson was going to beat the SEC teams every time they played them, and it wasn't every time, but they won their share. Well, last year they lost 3 times to SEC teams. That's if I was coaching, that would be my focus. Is look, we can't let this happen again. And again, I trust Dabo and the staff. They know way more about it than I will ever know about it.
right.
But there's got to be some like, hey, we're not letting this team come in our stadium and push us around. That can't be allowed. How about you?
I was thinking about, I was reading the message boards and seeing some other picks out there and started to put something up and I decided not to. I think it's going to be a pretty good scoring affair. If somebody handed me, I never did like to do like somebody telling you do this or else, but if somebody handed me a briefcase full of cash and said, you're betting it all on something, what are you betting it on? I'll say Clemson by 6, high scoring affair, multiple Hoosier field goals, multiple Klubnik touchdowns. So if I had to put if I said 37-31, is that too many points? Maybe, but I'll put those conditions on. That's just kind of how it feels. Well, we will
You're facing a great quarterback.
Yeah.
You're facing a great quarterback. Look, there's 3 teams that are kind of in the hunt to be national championship teams that have their quarterback back, and 2 of them are going to be on that field Saturday. The other one's Penn State. So I think it's going to be a fun game, and also don't think either one of the teams that loses is out of it, and I don't think the team that wins is definitely going to the playoff because I think the schedules are tough enough for both of them.
Good point. We'll end it on that note. I don't think we can do much better. We will talk to you after the game. Hopefully, we will be not needing a bunch of bleeps to make this a family-friendly podcast as it usually is. But hey, both, man. And then we're going to also start mixing in midweek. We'll do a little bit of catching up on Clemson recruiting commitments and kind of profiling those guys who are committed for the class of 2026. So stay in touch with us for that. Subscribe. That's one of the best ways to find out when we have posted a new episode. And until we talk to you next, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.